Did you really think you'd be celebrated too? This is only for Thomas and Alex.
What's wrong with you? Did you really think, as just the wife, that you'd get celebrated? How shameless.
What was supposed to be a celebration after giving birth had no place prepared for me. And instead, Grace demanded that I cook for the guests. Rather than defending me, Thomas joined Grace in mocking me. To Grace and Thomas, I was nothing more than a convenient housemaid who had given them an heir. I felt tears well up at their cruel treatment, but they ignored my feelings and kept urging me to hurry up.
Hey, why are you crying? You don't have time for that. Everyone will be here in an hour.
Still recovering from postpartum pain, I had no choice but to stand in the kitchen. Why is this happening to me? Why do I have to go through this alone? That's it. I'll cut off all support right now. What they didn't know was that I held a trump card that could greatly affect them. As I moved the knife furiously, filled with resentment, I silently swore to get revenge on Grace and Thomas. My name is Olivia. When I was a child, I lost my dad in an accident, and my mom raised me as a single mother. She was always busy with work and, understandably, never attended school events like sports days or parent-teacher meetings. While my classmates spent weekends going places with their parents, I was always home alone. I remember feeling as a kid that life was just unfair. Even though I had a lonely childhood, I still knew my mom was working hard for me.
I'm sorry, Olivia. I know you're always feeling lonely.
My mom would always apologize to me with a guilty look on her face. She must have felt guilty for not being able to spend much time with me. But I knew she was sacrificing her sleep and working tirelessly for my sake.
No, Mom. You're the one working so hard all the time. Thank you.
Thanks to my mom, I was able to live comfortably and even go to college. While I sometimes felt lonely, I could never blame her for it. After graduating from college, I moved out of my mom's house and started working at a company. It's a small workplace, but my colleagues and boss are all kind and supportive. A few years later, once I had gotten used to the company, I met Thomas, a salesman from one of our client companies, through work. I had dated a few men before, but many of them either looked down on me or pitied me excessively when they found out I was raised by a single mom. However, Thomas, despite being a graduate of a prestigious university and having an impressive career, never acted superior or treated me differently because of my background. It didn't take long for me to realize that Thomas was different from anyone I had met before, and I quickly found myself falling for him.
Mom, Dad, this is my girlfriend Olivia.
After we had been dating for a while, Thomas introduced me to his parents, Grace and Paul.
Well, so you're Olivia. I've heard so much about you from Thomas.
Grace seemed to have a bit of a strong personality, while Paul, sitting next to her, was less talkative but appeared to be a kind and gentle person. Grace and Paul appeared to welcome our relationship and were so eager about it that they started asking when we'd get married.
All my friends already have grandkids. I can't wait to see a grandchild of my own.
Although I couldn't help but smile wryly at Grace talking about grandkids before we were even married, I was relieved that they were supportive of our relationship. Eventually, Thomas and I had our wedding and became husband and wife.
It'll be more convenient to live nearby in case anything happens, right?
With those words from Thomas, we decided to live in an apartment close to Grace and Paul's house. At the time, it seemed like a reasonable idea, but it turned out to be a mistake. After we moved, Grace started visiting frequently without notice. What's more, She would let herself into our home even when Thomas and I weren't there. Thomas had given her a spare key without discussing it with me, so she could come and go as she pleased. She would open the fridge without asking or start cleaning the living room.
Olivia, don't you think you're slacking off on housework just because you're working? The house was messy, you know.
When I came home tired from work, there was Grace, lounging on the couch like she owned the place. Just seeing her face made my exhaustion hit even harder. Sure, there were probably areas where I had been neglecting housework because of my job. But no matter how much she considered it her son's home, this was still a separate household. Having her barge in and do whatever she wanted only left me feeling upset and frustrated. Well, Grace, could you please let us know before visiting next time?
Why would I need to do that just to visit my son's house?
I tried to politely ask her to notify us before coming over, but she clearly didn't like the idea.
If I don't keep an eye on things, you'll just neglect your chores, won't you? If you can't keep up with housework, you should quit your job and focus on supporting Thomas.
Paul works for a major bank and is incredibly busy. Grace had been a stay-at-home mom for many years to support Paul in his demanding career. Because of that, she likely disapproved of the fact that I continued working even after getting married. She would bring up the topic every chance she got, insisting that I should become a full-time homemaker. Unable to take it anymore, I talked to Thomas about Grace's unannounced visits and her constant remarks about me quitting my job. However, he just told me I was overreacting.
She's my mom, so she's your family too, right? Stop treating her so coldly.
I'm not treating her coldly. I just want to maintain healthy boundaries. No matter how much I tried to explain, it was like talking to a wall. Thomas insisted that Grace didn't mean any harm and, instead, blamed me for rejecting her. With Paul rarely home due to his busy schedule, there was no one to rein in Grace's behavior. Feeling a growing sense of frustration, I realized a year had already passed since our wedding. By then, I was pregnant.
The first baby has to be a boy.
When I shared the news of my pregnancy, Grace's eyes lit up with excitement as she urged me to have a son. But no matter how much she insisted, I couldn't control the baby's gender through sheer effort. However, Grace's expression was completely serious. The thought of what might happen if it turned out to be a girl terrified me. After getting married, I quickly realized that Grace had very old-fashioned beliefs. She firmly believed that women shouldn't work, should stay at home, obey their husbands, and give birth to a male heir. It was likely that Grace had been told the same things herself. While Grace was thrilled about having a grandchild and seemed genuinely happy about my pregnancy, her over-involvement had become excessive. During my pregnancy, she started visiting our house almost daily, wanting to take care of everything for me. But being pregnant was already exhausting, and having Grace, who was still an outsider despite being family by marriage, constantly around made it impossible for me to relax. My stress levels kept rising. As I entered the later stages of pregnancy, we found out the baby's gender.
I was worried it might be a girl, but am so relieved it's a boy.
Grace said as soon as I told her the gender, her first words lacking any sensitivity. If it had been a girl, I'm sure she would have criticized me harshly. With the birth of my son, everything around me changed drastically. When I informed Grace and Paul about the birth of my son, Alex, they came to visit me at the hospital. However, instead of congratulating me or offering words of comfort after the delivery, Grace focused entirely on Alex. Paul was the only one who showed any appreciation for my efforts, but Grace angrily snapped at him.
Is Olivia more important to you than precious Alex?
What are you talking about? There's nothing wrong with acknowledging Olivia, who risked her life to give birth.
Paul didn't back down and argued back, but Grace, with her strong-willed personality, clearly didn't like him defending me. Grace kept grumbling under her breath, which soured the atmosphere in the room considerably.
I'm sorry, but I've got work to take care of. Olivia, I'll come by another day to see Alex.
His phone had suddenly rung, and he left the room, explaining that an urgent work matter had come up. With Paul, the only person who could rein Grace in, gone, she began directing her malice at me without holding back.
Now that you've had the heir, you're no longer needed. You should be grateful we accepted someone like you, raised by a single parent, and from who knows where, into our family.
Grace started making snide and passive-aggressive remarks toward me. That's awful. Have you always felt that way about me?
Awful? Stop acting like a victim. I put up with you and supported you only until you gave birth to Alex.
According to her, the support she provided wasn't for me as her daughter-in-law, but purely for Alex, who was yet to be born.
To be honest, I didn't like you from the moment we met. You seemed obedient enough, so I allowed the marriage. But you turned out to be more defiant than I expected.
Even when Grace and I argued like this, Thomas didn't step in to stop it. He just laughed awkwardly. Thomas, help me. Why aren't you saying anything?
Enough already. It's the truth. So what's the problem? A wife is just a tool to have kids in every family, isn't she?
I was speechless at his outrageous words. I realized then that the kindness I thought Grace and Thomas had shown was all an illusion. It was at that moment I realized these people only wanted a wife who was convenient for them. However, having just given birth and unable to do much, I had no choice but to endure their harsh words without being able to fight back. After I was discharged, Grace started calling me over repeatedly to cook, do laundry, and clean.
I'll take care of Alex, so you focus on the chores. Don't even think about slacking off.
Saying this, Grace took Alex from me. Wait, please, let me take care of Alex.
Do you really think someone raised by a single parent like you can properly raise a child? Just do as you're told.
Grace ordered me around with a domineering attitude, leaving no room for objection. It was as if she were a mistress giving commands to her housemaid. As this life continued, Grace suggested hosting a family gathering to celebrate Alex's birth. I wasn't thrilled about the idea, but since relatives were coming, I couldn't refuse.
You don't need to invite your mother.
It was only natural to invite my mom to a celebration for my child, Alex. However, Grace made it clear that she saw no need for my relatives to be involved. Though I was angry, I thought it might be better not to bring my mom into such a toxic atmosphere, so I kept quiet and endured it. I decided I would introduce Alex to my mom at another time instead. The day of the celebration finally arrived. Thomas and I brought Alex and arrived at Thomas' parents' house at the time Grace had specified. Paul had a work issue and would be coming home late. When we were shown into the living room, I tried to sit next to Thomas, but Grace suddenly said something outrageous.
Why are you trying to sit down? You don't have a seat here. Stop dawdling and get to work.
Work? What are you talking about? Having not been told anything in advance, I was completely confused.
You're preparing the food.
With a malicious smirk, Grace took Alex from my arms as she always did. Preparing food? But today is supposed to be a celebration for Alex's birth.
That's right. Did you really think you'd be celebrated too? This is only for Thomas and Alex.
What's wrong with you? Did you really think, as just the wife, that you'd get celebrated? How shameless.
Rather than defending me, Thomas joined Grace in mocking me.
Come on, get moving already. You're so slow. You should be grateful you even got to bear my child, considering your background as someone raised by a single parent.
It was clear they didn't see me as part of the family. To them, I was nothing more than a convenient housemaid who had provided them with an heir. I felt tears well up at the sheer cruelty, but ignoring my feelings, they hurried me to get started.
Hey, why are you crying? You don't have time for that. Everyone will be here in an hour.
Still recovering from postpartum pain, I had no choice but to stand in the kitchen. Grace had only prepared drinks and ingredients, leaving me to cook the entire meal for the guests from scratch. It's so frustrating. Why am I the only one who has to go through this? As I cooked desperately, I heard Alex crying. It sounded like he was searching for me, and the sound pierced my heart. There was hardly anyone left who supported me. I began to worry whether I would have to keep living under their control, unable to properly spend time with Alex. No, I won't let that happen. If it comes to this, I'll cut off their support entirely. What they didn't know was that I held a trump card that could greatly affect them. If I withdrew that support, they'd be in serious trouble in no time. As I furiously chopped vegetables, I silently swore revenge against Grace and Thomas.
Hey, what on earth is going on here?
Paul, who returned home late, turned pale when he saw that I was the only one being forced to work.
What's with that look on your face?
I'm asking why Olivia is the only one standing in the kitchen when this is supposed to be a celebration.
Grace was startled by Paul's stern demeanor. It was likely because Paul was usually very gentle and almost never raised his voice.
What's the big deal, Dad? It's normal for a wife to work at her husband's home.
What are you talking about?
Paul didn't look so much surprised by Thomas and Grace's outrageous behavior as he did genuinely anxious about something. While the gathered relatives murmured, I walked up to Paul with determination and said firmly, "I'm sorry, but I'm cutting off all support." Out of everyone present, Paul was likely the only one who understood the full meaning of my words.
What are you talking about? What support?
What power do you think you have? Stop joking around.
The two of them, accustomed to looking down on me, didn't take anything I said seriously. But Paul's face turned even paler.
Please, Olivia, let's talk.
No, I've had enough of being exploited by these people. I firmly told Paul my decision, then picked up Alex, who had been lying in the living room, and left the house.
Wait, where do you think you're going?
Olivia, don't you dare do this.
Behind me, I could hear Grace hysterically shouting and Thomas' confused voice, but I didn't look back even once. I immediately hailed a taxi and gave the driver my home address. Once I got home, I quickly packed my and Alex's belongings into a large duffel bag before Thomas could return. I filled out the divorce papers I had prepared earlier, leaving them on the living room table. Those divorce papers were something I had obtained in frustration after a previous fight about Thomas and Grace, keeping them as a sort of safeguard. I no longer had any reason to stay in that house. Carrying my belongings and carefully placing Alex into his baby carrier, I got back into the taxi waiting outside and headed to my mom's house. On the way, I called my mom and briefly explained the situation. Despite her busy schedule, she was waiting outside the house with a worried expression when I arrived.
You've done so well to endure this for so long. Welcome home.
I'm sorry, Mom, for making you worry. My mom's words brought tears to my eyes. At last, I had returned to a place where I could feel safe. Not long after, I started receiving numerous calls from Thomas and Grace. Given how much they had looked down on me, they were probably boiling with anger. It was obvious that if I answered, it'd only be scolded condescendingly.
You don't need to answer those calls. Just block their numbers.
My mom, who was playing with Alex, said that with a mischievous smile. I realized she was right, so I blocked Thomas and Grace's numbers, as she suggested. They would surely be furious when they realized they were blocked, but I no longer cared. I wasn't the same person who had been treated like a maid and forced to cater to their whims. Since leaving them, I felt a surge of courage I'd never experienced before. Having my mom, my greatest ally, by my side was a big reason for that. A few days later, Paul showed up at my house with a group of high-ranking bank executives.
As expected. Leave this to me.
As the suited men, led by Paul, stood at the front door, my mom stepped out to meet them. Immediately, they began pleading with her.
Could you please reconsider?
Reconsider? That's out of the question. Normally, I don't bring personal matters into business, but this time is different.
It seems my lack of oversight caused Olivia great distress, and I deeply apologize for that.
But my mom, her expression icy, firmly refused.
The decision to terminate our relationship has already been made.
Please, no.
The bank executives looked utterly hopeless. And for good reason. What they didn't know was that my mom was the CEO of one of the region's largest companies and Paul's bank's biggest client. When the branch Paul managed was on the verge of closure due to a significant loss of clients, my mom became a major client, effectively saving the branch. With my divorce from Thomas, Paul stood to lose the most. There was a reason Thomas and Grace didn't know this critical fact. I had asked both my mom and Paul to keep my mom's position a secret. I had chosen to find a job on my own rather than joining my mom's company because I hated the idea of people treating me differently because of her position. This stemmed from my past experiences as a student, where some classmates who learned about my mom tried to ingratiate themselves with me.
You're a rich kid, right? If you've got money, treat us.
I had seen plenty of people try to take advantage of me with such remarks. Tired of those shallow relationships, I decided to keep my mom's profession a secret and let people see me for who I truly was. My mom understood and supported my decision. While we had no choice but to inform Paul due to business matters, we deliberately kept Grace and Thomas in the dark about my mom's position, even when I got married. It's true that my family was wealthy, but my mom preferred a simple lifestyle, and our home was just an average size. Because of this, Thomas and Grace likely had no idea that my mom was a business owner until it was revealed to them. I never imagined that keeping this a secret would make things worse. Thomas and Grace, who once seemed kind, began to look down on me after I gave birth to Alex, as though I were no longer of any use. Grace, coming from a prestigious family, and Thomas, raised by her, both had an overinflated sense of pride. To them, I, the daughter of a single-parent household, was an easy target. Since Alex's birth, I had been their punching bag, but neither of them could have guessed that I held the ultimate trump card, my mom.
They hurt Olivia, and they will face the consequences.
Once my mom learned about the harassment I endured from Thomas and Grace, she decided to switch her primary banking business to another institution and immediately contacted Paul's bank. This prompted the bank executives to rush over to meet her.
Now that Olivia's ties to your family are severed, there's no reason for us to continue any dealings with your bank.
Faced with my mom's unyielding attitude, a desperate Paul pulled out his phone and immediately summoned Thomas and Grace to come over. However, when they arrived, instead of apologizing, they started yelling at me the moment they saw my face.
You kidnapped our heir. Give Alex back.
And what's with those divorce papers? I won't allow it.
They didn't seem to grasp the gravity of the situation and continued spouting nonsense.
Enough already. You two have no idea, but angering her won't end well for you.
Paul, furious with the two of them, began explaining my mom's true identity. However, Grace and Thomas just laughed off his words.
A CEO? There's no way that's true.
This plain old woman? That's gotta be a mistake.
Their bad habit of judging people by appearances was glaringly evident. I couldn't help but think how similar the two were as mother and son, completely oblivious to the predicament their attitudes had caused.
If only it were a joke. But you two have no idea what you've done. If this bank falters, it'll be entirely your fault.
That's impossible. No way.
At first, Grace refused to believe it, but as she saw Paul's extremely serious expression, her face gradually turned pale.
Are we done here? Continuing this is a waste of time. No matter how much you apologize, the fact remains that you hurt Olivia.
Wait. You two apologize properly.
With a terrifying expression, Paul grabbed Grace and forcibly made her apologize to my mom.
Excuse me? Aren't you apologizing to the wrong person?
Even then, my mom maintained her cold demeanor.
You're only apologizing because you've learned about my position, but the one you should truly apologize to is Olivia.
Mom? I hadn't been able to talk to her before, thinking it would only worry her. But when I returned home looking defeated with Alex in my arms, my mom understood everything without me needing to say a word. Sensing my mom's anger, Grace finally seemed to realize the gravity of the situation she had landed herself in.
This is all a misunderstanding. I was just testing to see if you were suitable as my daughter-in-law. I never bullied you.
A test? Even now, Grace shamelessly tried to defend herself with a ridiculous excuse.
Yes, I know it must have been tough, but it was all an act. And of course, you passed. So don't worry about the past. Just come back. From now on, let's get along like real family.
With a forced smile, Grace brazenly insisted on her story. Her blatant change of attitude left me speechless. But while Grace tried to smooth things over, Thomas said something even more outrageous.
Ridiculous. Stop sucking up to some female CEO. It's pathetic.
Thomas sneered at both Paul and Grace. He likely thought this situation didn't concern him directly.
You really have no idea, do you?
Paul said with a sigh of exasperation. Just then, a phone started ringing loudly.
Who's calling on a day off?
It seemed to be Thomas' phone ringing, and muttering under his breath, he answered the call. To his surprise, the caller turned out to be an executive from his company, and Thomas' expression instantly shifted to one of nervous tension.
What have you done?
The furious voice on the other end was loud enough for us to hear.
What do you mean?
Thomas responded in a trembling voice. He still didn't seem to understand why he was being yelled at. In reality, my mom's company was a major client of the company Thomas worked for. It seemed the executives were calling to confront Thomas about what offense he had committed, as his careless behavior had completely ruined a deal the sales department had spent 3 years securing.
Don't come back to the office until you've gotten the CEO's forgiveness.
No way.
The call ended abruptly. Thomas was left stunned, unable to process what had just happened.
Olivia, I was wrong. Please forgive me.
He suddenly turned to me, apologizing frantically. It seemed he finally realized his position at the company was at risk. Gone was his smug attitude from moments ago. Now he was desperately apologizing to me and my mom. His dramatic shift was so absurd that I couldn't help but laugh. It's too late. No matter how many times you apologize, I can't forgive you. This conversation is over. Goodbye. With that, my mom and I shut the front door firmly in their stunned faces. Afterward, my mom agreed to continue doing business with Paul's branch on the condition that Thomas accept the divorce and grant me full custody of Alex. As for Thomas' disciplinary action, it was left to the company to decide, and he was given an ultimatum by his superiors. Either accept a transfer to a rural area or resign voluntarily to take responsibility. If Thomas accepted the transfer to a rural area, his income would significantly decrease, but at least he wouldn't be unemployed. However, unable to swallow his elite pride and endure a demotion, Thomas shockingly chose to resign voluntarily.
I'm talented. I'll find another job in no time.
However, no matter where he applied, he was rejected during the resume screening phase. It was no surprise. His reckless actions had become widely known in the industry.
Why? How could someone as elite as me end up like this?
In the end, the only work available to Thomas was manual labor, and he begrudgingly continued with the unfamiliar tasks, all the while blaming me and my mom for his downfall. Paul promised that Thomas and Grace would never see me or Alex again. For Grace, this turned out to be the harshest punishment. Unable to see Alex, she became so devastated that she reportedly started isolating herself at home. As for me, although I became a single mother, I returned to my previous company and continued working hard every day for Alex. There were times when I shared my worries with my mom, wondering if the absence of a father figure might affect Alex, but she reassured me with a confident response.
Even with one parent, you grew up wonderfully. There's no need to worry.
My mom's words gave me the determination to protect Alex no matter how tough things got. Despite her busy schedule, my mom still made time to visit Alex. The days when Grace and Thomas treated me like a servant now felt like a distant memory. I cherished the peaceful life I shared with my mom and Alex.